8. They were 20 feet across, crawling straight through the walls, with teeth 10 feet high, covered in blue slime and smelling awful, said Villa. It's a good job I'm made of resilient stuff, otherwise I wouldn't have made it. You aren't, and you didn't, said Carell. What? You are not made of resilient stuff, and you didn't make it. At least not on your own. After 5 seconds you collapsed on the ground, whimpering like a 2-year-old who's been left by his mother. If I hadn't picked you up and led you by the hand, you'd still be there. Wonderful, said Villa. You really know how to make me feel good. Still, you didn't see those creatures. 20 feet across, 30 feet, actually. What I saw were translucent, 30 feet across, like 8 separate snakes coming out of one central body. They were able to kill anything just by wrapping one tentacle around the neck. But mine were... Shut up. It was Avon, concluding work at the computer. He turned to Carell. According to the station console, they have 5 unmarked freighters going between this time-space and another. They travel out via SCAT and eventually come back via the black hole. Whilst they are away, they are stealing arms, plasma shielding, and a dozen other raw materials that can be used, apparently, to stage a very, very large attack on the central institutions of the Federation. And by gathering everything outside this universe, they can do it all in absolute secrecy. Villa was pleased with himself at his deductions. Certainly, this scale of operation would cause a lot of comment if done on the doorstep of the Federation. But that is not the point. No? Villa was crestfallen. No, it can't be, can it? It was Carell who had realized the implications. Blake told us that we would start to break up after we stayed too long on the other side. So? Villa still didn't quite understand. So, Villa, by implication, anything from the other side, like the guns and the shields and everything else they gather over there, must eventually be quite unstable and useless in this universe. Maybe they haven't realized yet? They must have, because they have been doing this trafficking for months. There is only one reason why they should be bothering to bring back junk. To give it to the Federation? Suggested Villa doubtfully. For the people behind this operation, getting the Signum and RT alloy from the other side is only part 1. Once here, they are selling it on to Federation outposts as new supplies. In the shipments, they'll probably mix up some good weapons and materials with the decaying stuff. Now they have an advantage. Blake told us we would start to decay and the ship would start to break up in a matter of days. But according to the computer on the station, the smaller the object, the slower it takes to break up. By the time the recipients of the weapons find out that some of them are not working, it'll be long past the time these people need. The Federation will be in turmoil, half the troops will be without proper weapons, and when things like that happen, the first thing the Federation does is kill off some of its senior officials. So, who is behind this? Not who. What? What? Aurak. Avon spoke the name harshly. Then that means Servalan. Quite probably. So, Servalan wants an all-out attack on the Federation. A civil war. And what do we do about it? Go to the 5th sector. Villa and Carell looked blank. Avon gave them more information, to get as far out of the way as possible. And with that, he strode from the room. What is in the 5th sector? Villa asked Carell. Stars, planets, comets, debris? You name it, it's all there. Okay, you're not going to tell me either. Villa, if I knew what Avon was up to, I might not tell you, but I would tell you that I knew. Very comforting. What are you going to do? Work it out. And Villa was left alone on the main deck. The thief sat and pondered, gave up, and went and got a drink. Carefully, he poured a little onto Cat's receptors. "What would you do in my position?" he asked, as the machine considered the latest concoction. "Add some Syrian 72, sir," Cat replied. "I don't mean that. I mean about Avon, and Corel, and this ship. I'm turning into a navvy, doing odd jobs, opening a couple of doors from time to time, and that's it. It was all right when there were 7 of us. But now..." He changed the topic of conversation. "Do you know that I really do have an Alpha Plus rating? That's not just a story, it's not a boast, you know." "Sir, I know that. You were rated Alpha Plus from the age of 3. You began to fake your questionnaires from the age of 7 to avoid going into the military academy. When you got to the lower classes, you found you could control those around you with your schemes and get away with your petty thefts. So behaving stupid became a habit. But you then found that, as a lower-grade citizen, you had few rights and fewer options in the workplace, and pushing truckloads of rubbish around the lower levels was not your idea of fun. So your thieving got more sophisticated, and you learned to open locks. There are some that say you were the greatest thief of the whole 2nd century." "Do they? Really?" Villa perked up a little. "But you're right. I couldn't get back. Acting became a way of life. Now I'm stuck with it." "Does it worry you, sir?" "Sometimes. Sometimes I really do get afraid. Like, really scared. I don't have Avon's hardness or Corel's coolness. But being thought of as stupid is beginning to pale a little as a way of life, especially as I seem to be doomed to spending the rest of my life with Avon." "So, how do you intend to make life better?" "By impressing Avon and Corel, I suppose. Then they'll treat me with more respect." "Sir, you do have a problem." "Do I?" "You don't know what Avon is planning." "That's right. I have a problem. Avon. It's always Avon." "Then, sir, solve the problem. Avon won't expect you to know, so you will always be one jump ahead of him." Villa was suddenly wide awake. It appealed. And besides, it wouldn't be hard work. The computer would do it all. Villa turned to Blake. "I want you to solve a problem for me," he announced. "Define the problem," said Blake. "Avon is taking us into the 5th sector. He must have a plan, and I don't know what the plan is." "Why must he have a plan?" asked Blake. "He always has a plan," Villa told him. "Very well. We assume he has a plan. Since the directional computers are locked onto a course which leads into the 5th sector, we can also assume he is telling the truth. We can also assume that the ultimate destination lies somewhere along our current flight plan." "Good. So, what lies along that flight path in the 5th sector?" "Several thousand planets." Villa groaned. He knew it wouldn't work. He had a brainwave. "Do any of them have minerals or crystals or products that Avon might want to use to build teleport facilities?" "No," said Blake. Villa forced his mind into something resembling action. "Are any of them likely locations of white holes?" "No," said Blake. "Well, what else can it be?" "Sadly, there is not enough background information on Avon in my databanks to answer that question." "Why not?" Villa was shocked. "You seem to know all about me. Why not about Avon?" "I have widely available data on a lot of Avon's background, but he is habitually secretive, and that makes it much harder to work out what is on his mind. The only solution is for you to have a look at the list of planets and see if any strike you as being of interest to Avon." 2,000, you say? Well, Maybe tomorrow. Villa was losing enthusiasm fast. Sir, do it now, Cat commanded. You'll be angry with yourself if you let yourself down again. Do it now. You have to stay on watch, and there is nothing else to do. Blake, that esteemed custodian of the ship, sir, will tell you if there is any danger. I will feed the list onto the screen at your position. When we have the answer, then you can reward yourself with a drink. And at that stage, perhaps, I too may be permitted to partake of a little sustenance, sir. Are you ready? Villa gave in. Even the computers tell me what to do, he said. Despite himself, Villa worked his way through the list of grid references and planet names, along with alternative names, local names, official Federation names, and slang names for precisely 1 hour, 47 minutes, and 23 seconds. At which moment he stopped reading, looked up, and stared blankly at the master screen in front of him for a further 3 minutes. Eventually he looked back at the list. Not again, Villa looked at Blake. He can't. Can he? He can do what he wants unless you stop him, Blake announced calmly. You lost him. No, I must be precise, that is a virtue. I should have said, I presume you lost him. There was silence. I said, I presume you lost him. Am I right? Few people were able to speak to Servalan in that way and survive. Dareen was one of the few. Her mother had been a High Counselor who had backed Servalan in her bid for the presidency, and had suffered the inevitable loss of office that followed the defeat of Servalan's forces. But she had retained many friends, and was virtually the only ally that Servalan kept who was by and large dispensable. Now, finding it politically expedient to remain hidden from public gaze, she used her daughter as a proxy, and gave her free rein. The girl enjoyed the experience. Servalan regarded Dareen impassively. She was in her late teens, and showing much of what had been noted as her mother's combination of great beauty and rock-hard resolve. Her cropped black hair matched Servalan's own. Indeed, beyond the confines of their own headquarters, the similarities in the appearance of the pair were already being remarked upon. In 1 or 2 quarters, it was suggested that their hairstyle, combined with the flowing, revealing, highly decorated and totally impractical dresses, was becoming the new fashion. If Servalan and Dareen recognized the effect they were starting to have on high fashion, and they most certainly did, they didn't acknowledge it. They tended to have slightly more important things on their hands. It was Care Avon, wasn't it? Right inside Operation Headquarters, said Dareen. She emphasized the past tense and retained only the pretense of the interrogative. It was really an accusation of failure, that highest of crimes. Servalan gave up the act of silence and banged her hand on the table, but recovered and picked up the single blue rose on her desk, holding it to her face, affecting to smell the perfume. Eventually she put it back down slowly and looked up at her ally, attempting, through her slowness and deliberation, to regain the psychological advantage. He got away because our security system is designed to maintain the lowest of profiles and to keep information secure. We do not issue pictures of the criminals of the galaxy to all the guards. Perhaps, Dareen said in an equally measured but emphatic voice, that is where you go wrong. Avon may be a criminal to the Federation, but to us he could be immensely valuable. Do you realize how much information that man must have locked up in his head? Apart from being brilliant with computer hardware, he has experience of star drives working at TD-12. He has worked with at least 2 quite separate teleport systems, and from what I know of Avon, he has probably worked out what makes them tick. and I hear he is starting to develop quite an ability in redesigning software too. Servalan stood and paced around the office. It had become more decorative than she would have liked. Doreen would never agree to stand while Servalan sat, so the room had a visitor's chair. It was that one extra chair that made Servalan feel the room was over-decorated. The chair interfered with her pacing, forcing a slight detour each time she marched across the golden floor. She looked at Doreen. Her pure black dress contrasted vividly with the pure white walls. "Of course I know all that," she exclaimed. "But if you are suggesting that Avon would ever willingly agree to work with us, you are mistaken." Servalan looked exasperated. He trusts no one, not even his own crew. Besides, we have Aurak now, which, if I can remind you, is how we got the SCAT project into full production. Then why didn't Aurak tell us about Avon? 1, because Avon is using some new device which generates non-terrestrial random wave emissions, and 2, because he seems to be fascinated by this mind myth. Avon is supposed to be the great logical thinker, but he is acting out of type following a myth, so even Aurak has problems trying to work out what is going on. And 3rd, Avon told Aurak a lot of things, but he rarely gave Aurak reasons, and Aurak never asked. Now all this may give credence to your view on his brilliance, and I know all the incredible things he has done. She lingered on the word incredible and spread her hands. But there are more important things in the galaxy than Avon. He is human, and he is vulnerable. But he is still not our top priority. Becoming transfixed with Avon is not an error your mother would make. As the speech continued, so Servalan's voice had become more mocking, pushing Doreen about as far as she could be pushed. The girl had more patience than Servalan, but inside she contained the same viciousness and pure brutality. Each knew the other would kill instantly, but for the moment, each needed the other. Doreen was persistent. Who were the two with him? One was Villa Restel, a good thief, but otherwise harmless, useless and stupid. One of the originals, the least effective. And the other? A girl, Corel Marn, one of my agents. She stays with Avon, watches, monitors, and when I'm ready, she'll come back and report. And you don't doubt her integrity, letting Avon into the station? She didn't know about this operation any more than Avon did. She helped us get Aurak. I would think that is quite a recommendation for the time being, wouldn't you? Very well. Doreen seemed appeased for the moment. But one question remains. What will Avon do now? Spend time working on ways to use whatever information he found out here. From what was gathered, when he reached the station he didn't know much about what was going on, and his ship, although fast, showed no signs of any modifications beyond the drive and the defense mechanisms. He can't take the information to the Federation, since he would be recognized instantly and killed. And there's not much he can do with the knowledge of how to use the reality distort on SCAT, at least not much to our disadvantage. Doreen looked unimpressed. She walked across the room and inserted the key into the translucent box of spinning lights on the table. Aurak, what do you deduce Avon will do now? It is obvious, the machine said. As Servalan has pointed out already, he will try to use the information he has on your project for his own advantage. How will he do that? By extrapolating the logical sequence of events and working out what you intend to do. That will lead him to the conclusion that you want to take over the Federation. Avon thrives on confusion. Where there is confusion in administration, he can act best of all. He will work out a plan which will come into operation as and when you attempt to take over control of the galaxy. What form will his plan take? It will involve computer-based fraud. Villa's skills will enable Avon to steal any documents he needs and also open any locked computer entrances. His own skills are more than enough to pull off something very large, at least 10 times bigger than his last attempt. Which failed, said Servalan, because he relied on others. This time he relies only on Villa, who is ultimately expendable. To Dareen it seemed for a moment that Aurak was ready to say more, but nothing further emerged. She took out the key. "I wonder where he will make his base," she said. But Servalan did not answer.